Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. Hughie Fury will return to the ring this weekend in Saudi Arabia, taking on the former WBC champion Samuel Peter. It's not the only heavyweight fight on the card. I'll come to the other one a bit later on. That's between Hemi Ahio and Ali Kiyden. But we'll start with Fury and Samuel Peter on this card that is in Jeddah at the King Abdullah Sports City. This is a bit of a peculiar sort of card. You've got Amir Khan at the top against Billy Dib. You have Prince Patel fighting. You also have Hughie Fury. Also, Hemi Ahio taking on another prospect. It's a bit of a random sort of card, but make of it what you will. But Hughie Fury, his second fight for 2019, he's rebounding after his Kubrat Pulev loss in 2018. His first fight after that was just a couple of months ago, actually. It was in May against Chris Norad, the Canadian. It was a complete mismatch. Norad with a very padded record, 17-0. Hughie Fury made short work of him, getting him out of there in the second round. Honestly, I don't think many of us thought it would go 2 rounds, and Norad looked terrible. So Samuel Peter is actually a step up from Norad, and I think there's been some criticism by some fans to Hughie Fury about taking this fight, and obviously the level of the Norad fight. But it's one of these situations I've been thinking about. I don't actually have too much of an issue with this fight at this time, just because I think there had been a school of thought, and I sort of subscribe to it, where Fury, after his loss to Joseph Parker, he probably needed a bigger rebuild than he had before the Kubrat Pulev fight, because effectively he had one fight in between that. It was against Sam Sexton, but he had the opportunity. It was presented to him to take the IBF final eliminator against Pulev, and he took it. There were 3 others that didn't: Dillian White, Jarrell Miller, and Dominic Brazil. So he stepped up, he took it, he got beaten, had an eye injury, didn't look fantastic. And now I think actually maybe they're going to take a slower route back to, an eliminator or final eliminator. They'll work him into position, maybe take their time with the rebuild, because he's only 24 years old at this point. And is there any real reason to rush him back to another big fight and have him lose again? And maybe he does need a couple more years just to really fully develop, fully get his man strength and work his way into the prime of his career, because you can make an argument that he's not quite there yet. At 24 years old, have we seen the best of Hughie Fury? And I know there will be some sort of scoffing saying Fury doesn't really offer much. He's going to be a bit of a nearly man in the heavyweight division, but I just don't know. I mean, I'm still a little bit on the fence with Hughie Fury. I think he does have more to give. I don't necessarily think he's going to be the best heavyweight of his generation, but at 24, and he's fought at a relatively high level so far this early in his career, only 24 years old, but he's got 24 fights behind him. I think the best is yet to come, and I think they are going to sort of guide him back to a position where he can get into a big fight, and hopefully by then he's learned some of the lessons from his earlier fights. Obviously against Kubrat Pulev he got injured. That sort of stymied his performance. Against Joseph Parker he was just a bit too negative. He was on his bike pretty much the whole night, wasn't really throwing a lot of punches. He certainly was making the most of the ring and movement, and as Mick Hennessy says, shades of Ali. I don't think we'll ever forget that line from Mick Hennessy from that night. But I think Fury against Samuel Peter, there's enough of an interest factor here for me to be intrigued about it, because it's such a random fight. I just never would have thought that this was coming at us. But I guess at 2.5, 3 weeks notice, Sam Peter's been drafted in here, Hughie Fury, and also some of his other stablemates. I think Michael Hennessy from Mick Hennessy's stable is also on the card here. And there was a situation where Eddie Hearn of Matchroom was going to be involved, sort of co-promoting the event with the other outfit that's running it, but ultimately he pulled out. Mick Hennessy and Channel 5 in the UK steps in, and Channel 5 in the UK will broadcast the fight. So it will be an opportunity for Hughie Fury, Amir Khan, anyone who's on the broadcast part of the card, to get in front of British fight fans. And that's not going to be a bad thing in terms of their profile and building them up to an audience that may not be necessarily too familiar with them. So Fury and Peter, it's a random fight, as I said. I would expect that Hughie Fury's probably going to box to a decision here. I don't necessarily think he's going to stop Sam Peter. Sam Peter is a reasonably durable guy. He's pretty long in the tooth now. Allegedly, he's only 38, but he looks like he's closer in age maybe to 48, but listed as 38 on his record. I think he's going to look for a big punch, try to take Hughie Fury out if he can, but ultimately if Fury does what he does well, utilises movement, keeps Peter at the end of his jab because he's the bigger, taller man. He's got about 4 inches of height on Samuel Peter and about 3 inches in reach. Fury with an 80-inch reach. So I think he is going to probably pretty comfortably box to a decision, or maybe he will be able to wear down and wear out Samuel Peter over the 10 rounds at some point and take him out. But if I was picking this in terms of how it's going to pan out, I would pick Fury on points. That's just me. How about you? What do you make of that? And at 38, allegedly, does Sam Peter have anything left to give? If you actually look at his record, he's 38 and 7 losses now. 38 wins, 7 losses. It really has been downhill since about 2010. His best days were in the 2000s. You know, he was obviously a WBC champion all the way back, and I think it was 2008. Yeah, 2008. He beat Oleg Muskayev. So that was a good win for him, and obviously he's been in some pretty high-profile and entertaining fights. That one against Vladimir Klitschko, that was a real barn burner. Ultimately, he lost that one by knockout. He has been knocked out before 4 times, but by guys that are bigger punchers than Hughie Fury. I mean, you're talking the likes of Vladimir Klitschko, Robert Helenius. And I'm not sure Hughie Fury is in the same sort of league power-wise as those guys. I do expect him to win and win well. And Sam Peter, I'm not sure how long we'll see him in the heavyweight division, but he seems to be hanging around forever and a day. He's actually promoted by Dimitri Salita. I wasn't actually aware of that. And allegedly, according to BoxRec, and this is maybe due to some earlier wins at the earlier part of his career, he's listed as number 47 in the world, which really does surprise me. Samuel Peter is really sort of on the outside looking in. He's not in the conversation for a title shot. He's not in the conversation just to be ranked as a top 15 fighter in any of the sanctioning bodies. So if Fury has got anything about him, I think he'll box to a pretty comfortable decision, and he'll look pretty good in the process. And if he doesn't, well, that's not going to be a good look for him. I expect Hughie Fury to win this and win it well. And the other heavyweight fight that we have on the card is between Hemi Ahio and Germany's Ali Kiyden. Ahio from New Zealand, he's currently 14-0, 9 knockouts, against Kiydin's 8-0 record with 7 knockouts. So on the surface, it looks like Kiydin can punch. He's a smaller heavyweight like Hemi Ahio. He is powerfully built. You can see this from his BoxRec profile photo here. Listed at 5'11.5". Ahio is listed at 6 foot. So a battle of 2 smaller heavyweights. But looking at his record, yeah, even though it's 8-0, 7 knockouts, I don't have a lot of confidence in how good he may be, because look at the opponents here. Some of them are absolutely dreadful. 22 losses, 33 losses, 24 losses, 41 losses, 25 losses, 23 losses, 11 losses. He hasn't faced anyone approaching anything like a winning record. Definitely a club fighter sort of level in Germany at the moment. So this is by far and away for him the biggest step up of his career. Hiio has certainly on his record faced better fighters, at least on paper, than Ali Kiyden. But I guess Kiydin, at this early point in his career, he's just been sort of warming into his work. He's 28 years old. He's obviously been quite active since 2017. He fought 4 times 2017, 4 times in 2018, but this is his first fight for 2019. Hard to know if this is a guy with a padded record who can't fight, or a guy that just hasn't had the opportunity to get in the ring and show what he can do against a fighter more on his level. So we're going to see with this, but both these guys, smaller heavyweights, as I said, about the same height, powerfully built. We know that Hemi Ahio, he can punch. He doesn't always get the knockout, and if you can take him a few rounds and get past him while he's fresh, you can actually sort of take him to a decision sometimes. About half of his last 6 fights, he's been taking the distance, and some of the opposition hasn't been that great, but he has been getting some experience. He's just had a fight recently in the United States, and obviously this one is going to be in Saudi Arabia. So another test for Ahio. On the face of it, you might say, does Kiydin have a very padded record and is being sort of led as a lamb to the slaughter? Maybe. We'll have to find out. We'll see how good he is at the weekend. weekend, but this could be his chance to shine. But I think just on the face of it, because I don't really know how good Kiydin is, he's number 32 in Germany, and that's not saying a lot, number 360 in the world. We shall see how good he is, but Hiio, he's more of a known quantity, and on that basis, because he's faced the better opposition, he can bang. I think I'm going to go Hiio for the win in this one. What do you make of it? Ali Kiyden and Hemi Ahio. Hughie Fury versus Samuel Peter on this random card in Saudi Arabia. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.